Bail should be set on the accordance of how your mind, the change of mind.
If you've been rehabilitated, they should check and see have you been rehabilitated. That's what you're saying.
Yes, like, boy, you got niggas who done killed 4, 5 niggas. Bootsy, little Bootsy badass. Donkey, you know who Donkey is?
I just interviewed Donkey on my other podcast.
Donkey, nigga, I grew up on Bootsy, nigga know about Donkey. We out here.
Yeah.
All the way 100. All the way to
dumb way.
You feel? Like them niggas retarded.
Yeah.
So, right? Man, the whole past the 9.
Oh, nah, Bootsy different. I mean, Bootsy different too, but that nigga, Don't different. We just interviewed Don't. He different. You can't get him. I was trying to push him off of it. You can't get him off of it. He dead serious about what he talking about. And he was all the way to dummy way.
You all the way to dumbest?
That's what I'm saying. But and then you know how much time he had?
Life.
Quando Rondo just came home. After serving time in federal custody, he walked back out into the world, and the people closest to him are saying he is not the same man who went in. Not even close. This isn't a simple comeback story. It involves a tragedy that cracked him open in front of the whole world, walking away from a gang affiliation that had followed him since before his record deal, finding faith in the darkest chapter of his life, and now standing on the other side of all of it, with his eyes locked on his daughters, his music, and a future that looks nothing like the path he was on. Born Tyquan Bowman in Savannah, Georgia, he grew up in circumstances that shaped him long before the industry knew his name. Savannah isn't a city that usually dominates hip-hop conversation, but Quando Rondo changed that in the late 2010s with a melodic, emotionally raw style that separated him from the pack. His connection to NBA YoungBoy opened doors most artists from smaller markets could only dream of, landing him a deal with Never Broke Again and a feature on YoungBoy's hit, I Am Who They Say I Am. At his peak, he wasn't just moving numbers. He was a symbol of a certain kind of ambition, a young man from an overlooked city who forced his way into the conversation through pure talent and consistency. But the same streets that shaped his story never stayed in the background. His affiliation with the rolling 60s neighborhood Crips was never a secret. It was woven into his music, his circle, and eventually his legal troubles, with federal prosecutors later identifying his ties to several Savannah-based groups as well. For Quando, that affiliation wasn't a brand. It was a lived reality, with roots long before any record deal, and every controversy that erupted around him carried its weight. Shows got harder to book, venues pulled out. The violence surrounding him stopped being part of his past and kept becoming his present. Then came August 19, 2022, the date that rearranged everything. He and his crew were at a gas station in the Beverly Grove area of Los Angeles when 3 men in a white vehicle pulled up alongside their Cadillac Escalade and opened fire without warning. Quando walked away physically unharmed. His 23-year-old cousin, known as Lou Pab, did not survive. Law enforcement confirmed Quando was the intended target, meaning his cousin died in his place. The footage that circulated afterward showed him in a state of grief no words can fully capture. Not a rap beef playing out on a track, but a man watching someone from his own bloodline get taken from him while he stood there unable to stop it. In the weeks that followed, dark rumors started circulating, never officially confirmed, and Quando never made a direct public accusation, suggesting members of his own set may have had some knowledge of or involvement in what happened that day. Whatever the truth, the timing of what he did next made the implication hard to ignore. He went to Instagram and posted that he was his own man, that he'd laid his flag down, that he was no longer neighborhood, and that there had never been real loyalty in what he'd been part of. In a separate post, he wrote that it was time to spend time with himself and free himself from a lot of people, that his main man was gone, and he was done holding on to people who weren't truly with him. The blowback was immediate. Rapper Jay Stone, himself affiliated with the set, publicly said, "You can't just drop your flag without going through the proper process." Others in the rap world mocked him, suggesting the timing revealed something about his character, but the criticism missed the point. Quando wasn't managing optics. He was trying to survive. When you bury your cousin and the people who were supposed to have your back might be connected to why, the calculation changes entirely. In later interviews, he compared his decision to that of Stanley Tookie Williams, the Crips co-founder who ultimately denounced gang life from prison. Proof, in Quando's eyes, that even deeply embedded figures could choose growth over allegiance. But the streets weren't done with him. In December 2023, federal agents arrested him on charges that shook his fan base. An indictment naming him alongside 8 co-defendants for conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine, fentanyl, cocaine, and marijuana. The original charge carried a maximum of 20 years. For a 25-year-old with daughters at home, that number wasn't a statistic. It was a life sentence dressed in legal language. In August 2024, he pleaded guilty to a reduced charge involving marijuana specifically, with the more severe charges dropped as part of the deal. At sentencing, he apologized to Savannah, to his family, and specifically to his daughters, speaking about the stress and stolen time his choices had cost them. He was sentenced to 33 months and a $40,000 fine, and sent to FCI Edgefield in South Carolina, a different world entirely from anything he'd previously encountered with the law. Federal prison strips away everything the rap world runs on: the content, the clout, the constant reaction cycle. What's left is just the person and their own thoughts. For Quando, that stillness became the space where something already in motion kept building. Before he ever entered custody, he'd begun publicly identifying with Islam, and that private spiritual journey became increasingly central to how he talked about himself. The tradition has a long documented history of reshaping men in moments of crisis, Malcolm X being the most famous example, and for Quando, it arrived at exactly the moment he needed structure and moral clarity that neither the streets nor the industry had ever offered him. Members of the Muslim community reportedly encouraged him to consider resolving his long-running tension with Lil Durk through that same framework, rather than continued conflict. He never confirmed specifics publicly, but his tone visibly shifted: less aggression, more reflection, more talk of forgiveness and fatherhood. In May 2026, a federal judge granted his legal team's request for a sentence reduction, cutting 5 months off his term. On May 27th, the Bureau of Prisons confirmed he'd been transferred from FCI Edgefield into community confinement in Atlanta. Essentially a halfway house, the final phase of a federal sentence where inmates begin reintegrating under supervision, typically with an ankle monitor and strict check-in protocols. Not full freedom, but the beginning of the return. His full release date is set for November 11th, 2026, with 3 years of supervision to follow. And being placed in Atlanta specifically was its own kind of signal that he was being brought back into his life, one supervised step at a time. Then came July 22, 2026, the first real confirmation for fans that he wasn't just technically free, but present and speaking. Boxer-turned-streamer Adrian Broner was on a broadcast when a FaceTime call came in from Quando. What people noticed immediately wasn't the setting, it was the tone. The man who once carried the kind of energy that made every appearance feel like a potential headline for the wrong reasons now sounded calm and measured. The kind of settled that doesn't come from performing peace, but from actually finding some. He opened with the traditional Islamic greeting, Assalamu alaikum, not code switching for an audience, but speaking the language of an identity he'd been quietly building the whole time. He mentioned he was still on the ankle monitor, told Broner they'd stream together once it came off, and that was it. No drama, no beef addressed, just a man talking about what comes next. So what does his life look like now? His daughters are the thing he keeps returning to. At sentencing, he specifically called them out as the ones he was most sorry for letting down. And that thread of fatherhood keeps surfacing in everything he says. The music will almost certainly return. An artist with his talent and a fan base that's followed him through years of controversy doesn't simply walk away from what he was built to do. And the last 4 years alone, loss, betrayal, faith, federal custody, reinvention, have handed him more material than most artists gather in a lifetime. But how he frames it, what he chooses to engage with, appears to be operating under an entirely different set of rules than before. Reaction online has split into 2 camps. One is genuinely moved, pointing to the greeting, the composure, the sentencing apology, the fact that his first visible moment back wasn't him flexing or stirring anything up. The other camp has seen this before, arguing prison makes plenty of men talk differently, and that the real test comes once the ankle monitor is gone for good. That skepticism isn't disrespect, it's earned caution, because the culture has watched this story go both ways. What makes Quando's version different is the combination underneath it. Lupab's death wasn't abstract. He watched his cousin die in a hit meant for him and walked away, and that weight is permanent. The faith wasn't a jailhouse conversion. It was documented publicly before he ever went in. And walking away from a gang affiliation after fame carries real costs. The risk of being called a coward, of losing credibility, of isolation from the community that raised him. And he made that call anyway, before the federal case ever stripped away the rest of the persona and left him standing in court, simply as a man with daughters who had to decide what he was actually trying to build. He didn't just do his time and walk out louder than before. He entered federal custody already mid-transformation, and prison gave him 2 years of isolation to finish becoming who he'd been trying to become. Whether that holds once every restriction is gone is still an open question. But if it does, this might end up being the most important chapter of his career. Not the biggest commercially, but the one that finally makes sense of everything before it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think this transformation is real, or are you waiting to see more before you believe it? Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter of this story as it unfolds.